All right, so we're going to continue today with writing task 1 process diagrams. The last one that we did was hydroelectric power generation, but today we're going to go through the water cycle. There we go. Okay, so the diagram shows how water cycles through the environment on, above, and under the surface. We got this big diagram here, and we need to, the first step of the process is to look at the diagram and then to think about how many stages you would divide this diagram into. Okay, so just take a moment to do so. All right, so what do you notice? I'll ask Safa first.
Okay, the hydrological cycle start with the evaporation of the water from the sea. I think this one, yeah, by the sun. Then start condensation and in the air. Then fall other rain. After that, fall the rain in the mountain. After the rainfall, I think the water is infiltration in the ground floor or ground waters. And I think after that is the water is fall again in the sea, and the cycle is beginning from beginning again and again.
Okay. How many ways does the water return to, or how many ways does the rainwater return back to rivers, lakes, and the ocean?
I think 2.
Yeah. So how many steps are in this process?
The first step is the evaporation of the water and transportation.
Okay, first step is evaporation of water. What's the second step?
Condensation of the water in the air.
So is it evaporation only, or is there another process here? Number 1.
Transpiration.
Yes. Okay, then we've got condensation.
After condensation, precipitation, the water.
Okay, can we bundle those together?
Accumulation of the water in the air by evaporation and transpiration of water.
Okay. All right, well, let's keep them as separate processes then. So we've got condensation, then we've got precipitation, and what's the final step?
Water back to the rivers.
Yes. Water returns.
Through two phase or 2 steps. Actually, that's true.
Okay, so what are we calling the final step?
Hydrological cycle?
Well, let's just say water returns. The return cycle, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Bodies of water. And then it repeats, right? Okay, so the expression is let's flesh this out. So we've got our 4 parts. And can we group these parts?
I think the first and second steps we can connect it together.
Yeah, because that's the process of water going up, right?
Yeah, by the heat of the sun and then by the cold of the air, start condensation. So all these steps, I think, accumulated the water.
Yep. And then steps 3 and 4 are the downward cycle.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's flesh this out. Evaporation and transpiration of water. Shamri, tell me about it.
Due to the heat, due to the sunlight, that's get evaporated.
Okay, due to the let's say due to the sun's heat.
Yeah.
What happens?
The water gets evaporated.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just use present simple.
Okay.
Water evaporates.
Yeah, since we are talking about one particular picture, can't we say the water?
If it's a general process, you're not talking about specific water. It's just water in general.
Okay.
So no need for an article here.
Okay.
The is like pointing a finger, but this diagram just represents this process regardless of where it takes place. So it's not specific water that we're talking about.
Okay.
So water evaporates.
Water evaporates and carries the moist. Also, how to say that? Transpiration also happens due to the sun's heat, right?
It's not specified. You're not required to know anything that's not explicitly stated in the diagram.
Okay.
So just use the information that is available there.
Transpiration happens due to the heat. Transpirations also happens due to the heat.
You don't need to. I mean, you don't need to invent these steps.
Okay.
Right? You don't need to talk about that because that piece of information is listed for evaporation, but it's not listed for transpiration.
Okay.
Right? So there's no need to talk about it.
Okay.
But you need to paraphrase this stuff. Like you can't just copy the information from the points that explain the process. You have to put those in your own words. So we've got transpiration.
Yeah.
First point carries moisture from roots to the air. Second point supplies 10% of moisture in the atmosphere.
So transpiration carries moisture from the roots to the air.
Yeah, but you have to put that in your own words.
Transpiration takes moisture.
Okay. Can we say transports?
Okay, transport moisture. Transport moisture from the trees.
Well, it's from roots to air, right?
Yeah.
Right, so it takes the moisture up from the soil through the plant and out into the air.
Yeah, so transfer moisture from. So Can't we say as a whole trees instead of saying the whole process there from trees? No,
Yeah.
into the air.
Mhm. But it's more like from the roots of trees.
Okay.
We can also say carries.
Yeah.
That would work too. Okay. What details are we missing still for the evaporation process?
From the lakes or sea.
Mhm. Let's say from bodies of water, right? Including. Mhm. What else happens? What's that 90% business?
It creates the moisture in atmosphere due to the process.
Yeah. What would be a synonym for supplies?
Provides.
Yeah. Provides or is responsible for.
Okay.
That's another synonymous phrase. For
Responsible.
90% of the moisture. Now, what's a synonym for atmosphere?
Surface.
Sorry?
Surface. No.
Surface is the surface. The atmosphere is up in the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Or it says moisture in the atmosphere. Can we rearrange those words to come up with a noun phrase? Is responsible for 90% of. So we've got moisture in the atmosphere, but how would you transform that into a noun phrase? Same words, just a little bit of rearranging. Because when you paraphrase, changing the form of the words, like a verb to a noun or a noun to a verb or to an adjective, that counts as paraphrasing. So moisture in the atmosphere, you can change into?
Moisturizing the air.
Flip it.
Mm-hmm.
Say 90% of
air's moisture.
Okay, what's the adjective of atmosphere? Running out of time. Atmospheric moisture.
Oh, so that's a noun.
Yeah, atmospheric moisture would be a noun phrase instead of moisture in the atmosphere.
Atmosphere. Okay.
We say here comes from evaporation.
You could, if you don't want to use this verb, provides, or you can say 90% of atmospheric moisture. You can say comes from. Yep.
Or I thought we'll write like when we wrote the sentence, this amount of evaporated water accounts of 90% of moisture.
Okay.
So Ian, it pronounced as atmospheric.
Atmospheric. Evaporation. And sorry, Dina, you were saying
I thought I would write like this amount of water which is evaporating accounts of 90%.
Okay, you can say evaporation accounts for 90%
of atmospheric moisture.
Mhm. So then, if you've got this kind of structure, then in your next sentence, you could say transpiration, which accounts for the remaining 10%.
10%.
Yeah. Of atmospheric moisture or moisture in the air.
For the previous one, can we say evaporation account for 90% of moisturizing atmosphere, sorry?
I missed one word. Evaporation accounts for 90% of...
Moisturizing of atmosphere.
I'm not sure what word you're saying.
Moisturizing.
How do you spell that?
moisturing.
Oh, moisturizing.
Moisturizing.
No, that's for a cream. Use
Okay, it's not
moisturizer on
give
your
the same.
hands or on your face. No,
Okay.
no, we don't say water moisturizes the atmosphere. That's kind of a cute way to say it, but I've never heard that before.
Okay.
All right, so we've got the first part of the process. Good. And now, Dina, what about the condensation part? I'm not sure if you were speaking. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. After that, the process of condensation starts with forming cloud, and then rain.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what does the condensation process lead to?
Lead to lead to the formation of cloud.
Good. So cloud formation, and then you're just going in the opposite direction of what we did with the noun phrase previously. Formation of clouds. Cloud formation, the formation of clouds. Okay, that's an example of paraphrasing.
And then raining?
Yes, but we're going to, the way we've set it up right now is that's going to be our third step.
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to do that too.
Can we link it with the previous process? Like leads to the formation of a cloud and then rain. And then rain or raining, because we want noun phrase.
Well, if we're, what we discussed previously was that there's an upward process and there's a downward process. So
okay.
I would put these two in the first body paragraph, and then I would do the precipitation and return of water as the second paragraph. So imagine this, you're ending your first body paragraph with, after that, the process of condensation starts and leads to the formation of clouds. Okay, so then what would be the natural beginning of the next paragraph?
Maybe
it's a process, right? So you have to link it back to the last step.
Following that? or
Okay.
after that?
One small pointer is that if it's going to be the beginning of a paragraph, it should be a little bit more specific. You, just as a general principle, you don't want to begin a paragraph with references. You want to begin a paragraph by explicitly stating what you're talking about, and then you switch to referencing after. And what that means is referencing is using pronouns like it to describe a process, or the process to describe like the full name of the process. You don't want to begin a paragraph that way because it confuses readers. Because if you start by saying the process, the reader's like,
Which process?
exactly.
So
People are
maybe
super easily confused, so we want to be explicit. Yeah, go ahead.
in terms of precipitation and infiltration,
Or how about after? Or following the formation of clouds?
or once the cloud formation is complete.
Or is that ever a complete step? I'm not sure. Or once clouds have formed. What's going to happen next? What verb goes?
Falling.
Yeah, we can say rain falls. To the ground. Okay, rain falls to the ground. What if we want to use the word precipitation? What verb would go together with precipitation?
Precipitation occurs?
Yeah.
Or happens?
Simple verb, yeah. And then that precipitation, that water, when it gets to the earth, it can go in two separate ways, right?
Two ways.
All right, Chamri. What's one of the ways that water can go once it reaches the earth?
No ice and rainwater.
Sorry, it's a little bit hard to hear you. It's clear, but it's super quiet.
The water comes, you're asking how the precipitation comes to the ground, right?
Yeah, so we've got that step. That's 3. Rain falls to the ground or precipitation occurs. And let's put a transition here. And the water can take 2 routes. Okay, something like that. Or yeah, we'll leave that for now.
Okay. So accumulate water in.
So what's the first way?
The water get accumulated in water bodies?
That's before. So right now we're at here. The precipitation has fallen.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the earth. And then we've got 2 pathways, this one and this one. Here, let me get a pen and see if I can draw on this. Right, so we've done this step. Now We want this step, and we've got this step, right?
Okay.
So what's the first one? Our first option is,
Infiltration. Infiltration.
yeah, what does infiltration do?
The water comes like takes to the rivers and lakes.
Mm-hmm.
Infiltration.
So tell me what to write. How do we put this into a sentence?
Infiltration happens by accumulating water in grounds, in sea and water.
I'm not sure if accumulating is the best word. Because just from the diagram, it shows flow. It doesn't show a process of accumulation. So you don't want to add anything that's not in the diagram. Here's a kind of sentence formula. Infiltration, which is what, does what?
Which is flowing? No, flows.
Let's say, which is the flow of
Water
where?
to the ground, under the ground.
And what does it do?
Infiltration, which is the flow of water under the ground. Bringing water back to the ocean.
Okay, so simple verbs. In this kind of process diagram, time does not matter, right? There's no future, there's no past. Whenever you're discussing a process, time doesn't matter, so you just use present simple. So you really have to watch out for that S at the end of third person singular. The process, it, brings,
Okay.
or carries.
Carries water. Into rivers and lakes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And Safa, what's the other downward process?
The other ways were through the surface runoff. We will start the sentences with
The other way,
for water to retain.
way for water to do what?
To return to the bodies, to bodies.
To bodies of water. So let's not, we have to use different words for water because we're just going to keep saying water, water, water. So the other way for precipitation, right?
The ways for precipitation, yeah.
Precipitation, to return to bodies of water, is surface runoff. And there's a word that not enough people use, via. Okay, so there's another word. We've got through, we've got into, via. And what does via mean? Or you can pronounce it via or via, up to you.
Which occur from precipitation, the rain, and melting snow, or melting snow, actually.
Okay. Via surface runoff. from rain and melting snow. What's another way of saying melting snow? Just flip the words around.
Snow melting.
That's it. And sorry, I was just asking, does everyone know what the word via or via means?
Through.
Like through or by.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Snow melting. Okay. And then what would be the very end? Just to indicate that this is a cycle.
The cycle begins anew.
Good. That's a good phrase, but we need something to begin that sentence. You'd say from here, or at this point, the cycle begins anew. How? With water evaporating into the atmosphere. All right. Let's do a little bit of writing. Let's have everyone do the introductory paragraph. So the introductory paragraph, the formula is paraphrase the prompt. Just delete this. So paraphrase the prompt and write a general overview, which is a very brief summary of these 4 steps, the first 4 steps. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to do so, and please just post your work in the chat box. Okay, and if you need this document, I'll just share that with you. Okay, so I posted that in the chat. Okay, and I'll give you, say, 10 minutes. Sorry, I had my mute on. Dina, are you there?
Yes.
All right, I was just talking to myself. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. No, I had my mute on. The illustration depicts the process of cycling water in the atmosphere. It's a bit awkward. Let's see what language they use. They use the hydrological cycle, how water cycles. We can just say, because the hydrological
process.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean the process of water cycles.
Yeah, it's just called the hydrological cycle. How water cycles through the environment, that's the hydrological cycle. So why don't we just use hydrological cycle? It doesn't have a good synonym. In some cases, you have to use your vocabulary knowledge to leave things as they are, because any kind of paraphrasing is going to be more awkward than the original. Let's do depicts the hydrological cycle in the atmosphere, and also above and inside the ground. Well, the hydrological cycle is above and inside the ground, so this word also is problematic. Is there anything we can say about the hydrological cycle? It's the hydrological cycle in the atmosphere, on the ground, and under the ground. Right, because it's on the ground, under the ground, and in the atmosphere. 3 places. So in the atmosphere.
And on, above, and inside.
Atmosphere, on the ground, and under the ground.
What about above? It is already
In the atmosphere. Because both precipitation and condensation take place in the atmosphere. So 2 of those 4 steps take place in the atmosphere. So the whole process takes place in three places. Not including the bodies of water. So the illustration depicts the hydrological cycle in the atmosphere, on the ground, and under the ground. Overall, it's a natural cycle consisting of 4 stages. Good, the grammar is fine. I just want to change it to this natural cycle consists. Natural cycle consists of 4 stages, ending
with? Or?
Yeah.
Sometimes they write by or with. So which one? Always
By,
with?
by is often followed by the ing. It ends by doing this. It ends by finishing that.
Okay. I want to ask, when we like the first type of sentence as a grammar, when I say consisting, and then again comma beginning, we can use in one sentence two
Participial phrases?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can. Okay.
You probably want to vary them between relative clauses and participial phrases.
Okay, or maybe one with the this is the past, like for example, followed, and one with ing.
Yeah, passive.
But I mean, in
and active.
general, passive and active. So in general, we can use more than one.
Yes. Just don't fall into the habit of writing monster sentences.
No, but sometimes, yeah, it happens. Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason to write monster sentences that have more than maybe 2, max 3 subordinate clauses, because they get out of hand and they're too easy to make grammar mistakes. Okay. So.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Next one is Safas. The diagram demonstrates the cycle of water. We're going to call it the water cycle. Demonstrates the water cycle via the environment at the top and below the floor. Huh?
The ground, I mean.
Below the... Take the water cycle via the environment. In the environment, if you want. The water cycle in the environment. At the top and below the ground. Oh, okay. Above and below the ground. environment. On, above, and below the ground. Can we do that?
Same thing.
That's basically the same. Atmosphere. Water cycle. So instead of environment, say in the atmosphere. In the atmosphere. As well as cycle in the atmosphere as well as on and below the ground. Is that okay? The diagram demonstrates a water cycle in the atmosphere as well as on and below the ground. So diagram demonstrates, better word is illustrates. Illustrates. And that's a standard phrase you can use for any of these. The diagram illustrates.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, followed by a comma, watch out for punctuation. Hydrological cycle is divided into two steps. The first step, content two-phase evaporation, transpiration waters. Whoa, what's that all about?
Include two-phase.
Includes two-phase evaporation and transpiration. Two-phase evaporation consists of? First step, content by sun's heat, then condensation of water and formation of clouds. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of problems here. The second step includes precipitation of water by two processes. These are not precipitation processes. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. This is the after the precipitation. This is how the water come back to the rivers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we made a mistake here.
So instead of precipitation, second step.
Include water return to the bodies.
So we'll say returns water okay, this is getting too complicated for the general overview. Hydrological cycle is divided into two steps. Okay. What are the two steps? We're not going to try and fix it. We're just going to redo it.
Okay, first step, the evaporation of water and transpiration of water.
Let's call it the upward cycle. Of evaporation
And transpiration of water.
transpiration, and condensation. All right, that's the upward cycle. The upward cycle of evaporation, transpiration, and condensation. And the downward cycle of
Precipitation.
precipitation.
Water.
And then what else? What else is included in the downward cycle?
And infiltration.
That it's infiltration and surface runoff. So how would you group those two together?
Sorry, I didn't get this part.
So infiltration and surface runoff, those are two processes that are grouped together, right? And we called it.
This is a process of water retain to bodies of water, and then followed by water return to bodies of water via infiltration and surface runoff.
Yep, you don't need that for the general overview.
Okay.
You can put it if you want to. Right, but you want a general overview that's actually general, because if you put too many details in your general overview, then it becomes quite repetitive to include those same details a couple lines later. Illustrates the water cycle in the atmosphere, as well as on and below the ground. Divided into two steps: the upward cycle of evaporation, transpiration, condensation, and the downward cycle of precipitation, and the process of returning precipitation to bodies of water. Okay. All right, we've got another one then. Chomri. How the water cycle creates via on the ground. Creates what?
Oh, yeah, I missed that. Creates the water cycle.
The water cycle creates the water cycle.
Oh, no. Illustrate how the water cycle. Creates
Here's another simple way to do this. The diagram illustrates the steps in
the water cycle.
Yeah. Steps in the water cycle. Okay. Now I would just move this, but okay. Illustrates the steps in the water cycle on the ground, in the sky, and under the ground. It has 4 stages, starting from evaporation, transpiration of water, and ending by water. Okay, you had to change the ending of this word.
You mean the word return?
Yeah, just the ending. You have to conjugate it differently. I'm wondering if you can pick it up.
Water and ending by water. Coming back to the bodies of water?
Yeah, or returning.
Okay.
Mr. Ian, the word steps always followed by preposition in, steps in, or maybe you can say steps off.
Both are fine. These are the 4 steps of this process, the 4 steps in this process. In is probably much more common. There are
While
5 steps.
While a stage or process, most probably with of. Process of.
This is the process of, and then this is the process of water cycling in the atmosphere.
Yes, I mean, yeah, and steps in. Okay.
Water. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Ian?
So I'm not too crazy about this because we've got this water ending by water returning to the bodies of water. Ending by
Returning back to the ground?
I'm going to change this to its return.
Okay.
It's 4 stages starting from evaporation, water, and ending with
It returns.
the bodies of water. Okay, not bad.
I have a question still. So like I started saying the diagram illustrate how the water cycle creates. So in my mind, it's the perfect way to say that, okay? But you saw there's something missing, and you mentioned the steps in. So you mean to say how the water cycle creates is wrong totally?
It's completely wrong because it's missing the second half of the idea.
Okay.
Create is what we call a VT verb. Any verb, if you look it up in the dictionary, it'll say VT or VI. VT is a transitive verb, and it requires an object right after it. So if you don't actually have to check the dictionary, just make a super simple sentence like I create.
Okay.
And is that okay? Does that make sense?
I create.
It's like saying I love.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like there should be there's no end.
You need something there. Create what?
Yeah.
So in your sentence, the diagram illustrates how the water cycle creates what? And then it said via on the ground.
Okay, got it. I understand. Thank you.
So via is also going to be followed by a place word. We usually go to the United States via Buffalo.
Yeah.
All right, any questions about this part so far?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, so we've got this business. Why don't we turn this into, let's take our point form and let's transform it into 2 paragraphs. Okay. Dina, let's simply put this together into paragraphs. Remember, we need transition words and phrases.
So, shall I need to write in the box, chat box?
Now, tell me what to write. So because you're writing on a computer in this examination, you can write in point form and then transform your point form into full sentences and paragraphs. So this is our material for the first body paragraph. How do we put this together?
So maybe in terms of the first 2 process.
Okay.
Because here we have evaporation, transpiration like one, and condensation.
Mm-hmm. So let's say,
In terms of the upward,
okay, well, let's say let's just to be simple, the first part of the process is what? Because we said there's 4 parts, right?
yeah, the first part of process is 2. It's evaporation, transpiration, and condensation. Or maybe you can write to begin with the evaporation and transpiration, and then
Okay.
in middle of the paragraph we will.
Okay, so let's say this natural cycle consists of 4 stages. So let's say the first 2 stages of the process of the hydrological cycle.
Yes.
I want to be specific at the beginning of a paragraph. The hydrological cycle consists of evaporation, transpiration, and
I cannot see where you are writing now.
there's a delay.
Okay.
Okay, the first 2 stages of the hydrological cycle consist of evaporation, transpiration, and
Condensation.
there we go.
So due to sun's heat, we can put it the same due to the sun heat. Where is it?
Just give it a moment, it'll catch up. Do you see it now?
Yes, water evaporates from bodies of water, including rivers, lakes, oceans.
Mm-hmm.
And this amount is responsible for 90% of the moisture in the air.
Okay, so let's pick one of these. This evaporation.
Or evaporation accounts for 90% of atmospheric moisture.
Let's see how that fits. Whoops. Okay, good. Now,
can we put comma and we say accounting for 90%?
Where do you want to put that?
Oceans, I put comma, I take evaporation and then accounting for.
Yes, you can.
Mm. So this sentence all about evaporation. Now we'll go about transpiration.
Yeah.
Maybe the remaining 10% of moisture of air comes from transpiration.
Mm-hmm. Can we just keep the one we've got?
But maybe because we want to change accounts. Transpiration accounts for the remaining 10% of moisture in the air.
Yeah, and we can do the same thing, accounting for, if you want to, which accounts for, accounting for. If you haven't gone through the participial phrase part of the grammar curriculum, you definitely should, because this is a really easy way to expand your range of sentence structures. Relative clauses, they begin with which or that, which accounts for, very often can be transformed into participial phrases by just getting rid of this, it's called a relative pronoun, and transforming this word into a participle. And that's it, which accounts for, accounting for.
If it is present, active voice. If it is passive to.
Yeah, then you would use a passive participle, the third form. But it's not just present, it's any tense, past, present, future, that
Active.
transformation is identical. Which
Yeah, active
accounted,
is active voice.
yeah. So if it were which accounted for, it would still be accounting for. Which
Mm.
will account for is still going to be accounting for.
Yes, I know.
Carries, I prefer carries moisture from the roots of trees into the air. Okay, let's go with Safa. Next
Can
part.
we say, sorry, trees, roots, with the apostrophe? Trees, roots?
Moisture from the roots of trees into the air. Yeah, from
Trees, S, and the apostrophe, and the roots.
You could also say tree roots.
Okay.
But it's
The roots of them.
it's plants, any plants, right? Not just trees.
Mm.
Let's be less specific. Right, because the diagram shows trees, but obviously it would be any kind of plant life. Process would be identical. Plants, roots, plant roots. So you do have many options. Roots of plants, plants, roots, apostrophe, plants, roots as a noun phrase. From plant roots. Right, because if plant is a modifier, then we don't, you can't make it plural.
Now we can write, after that, the process of condensation starts and leads to the formation of clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Direct.
There we go. Okay, Safa. Use a parallel structure because we've got the first two stages. So that tells us how the next paragraph should begin. And your microphone is turned off. Okay, is Chamri there? Okay, go ahead. So go ahead.
The second stage would start from the precipitation.
Well, the second two stages.
Okay, second two stages.
Mm-hmm.
Stages starts from precipitation.
Let's, just to make things a little bit easier, if this is the structure you've got for this intro sentence, why don't you keep the same structure and just use a synonym for consist of?
Okay. So should we repeat saying the stages of hydrological cycle?
No, that you don't need. The second two stages, what's a synonym for consist of?
Having?
Nope.
Consist. Include?
Include is one, comprise is another.
Okay.
Comprise is a more sophisticated way to say include.
Okay, stages include precipitation.
Mm-hmm.
And water returns to bodies of water.
So this is what parallel structure is about. When you're making a list of items, whether it's 2 or 3 or more, they should take the same grammatical form, and that's controlled by the first item in the list. So if you've got precipitation as the first item in your list, that's a noun. The rest has to be a noun too.
Water creation? Sorry, water collection? No. Difficult to say.
let's say the return of water to oceans. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we've got this already.
Yeah. So the F should be simple F, right? Reverse, comma, following the process. Shall we go like that?
What would you like to do? Sorry, it's just very quiet.
Now we end saying water to ocean, lakes, and rivers. Can we continue the other sentence together by putting a comma after rivers and making FS simple F?
Let me see a second. So you want to put this part following as part of the first sentence?
Yeah.
Following the process of cloud formation. I think you could. Let me just do this whole thing. Second two stages comprise precipitation and the return of water to oceans, lakes, and rivers following the process of cloud formation. Yeah, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The second two stages include comprise precipitation and return to the water, to retain water to ocean, lake, and rivers. Following the process, cloud formation, rainfall to the ground. Um, okay, I want
Turn to.
to return to
Let's just say water can take
water
two
bodies
routes.
or bodies of water. Oh.
Two routes to reach bodies of water. To reach.
And the cycle.
Okay. So we need a transition.
Yeah.
The first route, we've got two routes. So the first route is
So, infiltration.
ground. The first route is infiltration, which is the flow of water under the ground.
That is in river.
Yeah, bringing or carrying
Water.
I'm going to say it because we've already got water too many times. The first route is infiltration, which is the flow of water under the ground, bringing it
In rivers, lake, and oceans.
Yeah. Bringing it.
Okay. Then,
Which is the flow of water under the ground, and it's a bit repetitive. The first route is infiltration, which is the flow of water under the ground. And then Other way.
Other way, okay. Of precipitation empties to the water via surface runoff from rain and snow melting.
Yep. And then from here, at this point, the cycle begins anew with water evaporating into the atmosphere. So this is, okay, this is 166 words plus the introduction. And this has more than one version of things, so this is a good length because we've got
Almost two.
we've got multiple ways to say some of these parts. All right, so it's going to be the right length. All right, any questions about this one? All right, let's take a short break then.